The story of Sakya Monastery is the story of community effort in service of a clear vision. Founded in 1984, the monastery has grown and thrived as a result of Head Lama, His Holiness Jigdal Dagchen Sakya's profound vision of a center that would preserve and protect Tibetan culture and religion. Rinpoche's leadership has been supported with care and devotion by Her Eminence Dagmo Kusho and the entire Sakya family. Numerous dedicated volunteers, notably Master Craftsman John Vichorek and Master Artist Dhawa Dhundup Ngoche, have offered their time, skill, and love to help Rinpoche's dream become a living reality. The vibrant center we experience today is a living example of what happens when many hands join to build the vision of their leader. His Holiness Jigdal Dagchen Sakya was born in 1929 in Sakya, Tibet. He was educated to be the head of the Sakya school of Tibetan Buddhism, as well as the successor to the throne of Sakya, the third most important political position in Tibet in early times. Dagchen Rinpoche's lineage is noble and revered for its holiness. It extends back for over 1,000 years. Since the 11th century, the Sakya male progenies are also regarded as emanations of Manjushri, the Bodhisattva of wisdom, Avalokiteshvara, Bodhisattva of compassion, or Vajrapani, Bodhisattva of power. Under the guidance of his father, His Holiness Trichin Nawang Tutap Wangchuk, and other distinguished lamas, including Rinpoche's root gurus, Zongsar Kensei Jamyang Choki Lodro Rinpoche, and Dilgo Kensei Rabsal Dawa Rinpoche, Dagchen Rinpoche received instructions in the Hinayana, Mahayana, and Vajrayana systems of Buddhism. In 1950, at age 21, Rinpoche married Sonam Sezom, who descends from a family of lamas and doctors of Kham, East Tibet. When she married, Dagchen Rinpoche's father gave her the name Jamyang Pema Palje Puti, and her title became Dagmo Kusho. Since she was the niece of one of the most highly realized Sakya masters of the 20th century, His Eminence Daesung Rinpoche III, her Buddhist training began at an early age. Her Eminence Dagmo Kusho has received extensive teachings and initiations from many revered lamas. She co-authored a book, Princess in the Land of Snows, about her life in Tibet and her family's escape over the Himalayan mountains. In addition to being a head lama's wife, mother of 5 sons, and a great-grandmother, she is a greatly respected Dharma teacher. She specializes in Tara initiations, practices, and teachings, and has many students around the world. In 1959, owing to the violent changes taking place in Tibet, Dagchen Rinpoche and his family, like His Holiness the Dalai Lama, fled to India. An invitation by Professor Terrell V. Wiley of the University of Washington to participate in a research project on Tibet enabled Dagchen Rinpoche to bring his family to Seattle, Washington in 1960. His immigration in 1960 makes him one of the first Tibetans in exile in North America. In 1974, Rinpoche co-founded, with Daesung Rinpoche III, the original Sakya Dharma Center called Sakya Tegchin Choling.
So from Dagmo Kusho's experiences, when all these people started coming to the house, and the small house where they had a shrine and people were interested, so Dagmo Kusho said, she went to His Holiness Dagchen Rinpoche as well as her own uncle, His Eminence Dagchen Rinpoche, and said that we have all these people coming in it, they're interested and they find some benefit to what you're teaching them. So it is your responsibility as Tibetan lamas or Tibetan teachers to provide a center for them where they can all gather and then exchange ideas and you can give teachings and help them in any way you can. And so she brought up this idea to both the lamas, and she said, you are not just some ordinary human being in the city, you are Tibetan teachers, you are well respected, and especially in the case of His Holiness Dagchen Rinpoche, you are the head of the Sakyapa, one of the heads of the Sakyapa tradition, and so you have a responsibility to do more than just being an ordinary person here in Seattle. And so she encouraged them to establish a center.
Dagchen Rinpoche is actually one of my personal gurus since my childhood. From whom I have received enormous teachings. He's one of my very important root gurus. And then at that time he told me that at the moment that we are having practices here in my residence, but we hope that and Dagchen Rinpoche is suggesting that we will start a center, and it's going to be called Sakya Tegchin. And so at that time, the kind of planning is just beginning to start the center.
That was Dagmo Kusho's effort into this, and then she herself tried to do as much as possible in establishing a center, and then eventually this monastery. Dagmo Kusho herself went to work, went to a regular job, and she worked 6 days a week and provided whatever financial support she could herself to the monastery. So the two purposes to Rinpoche's establishing this monastery here. The main purpose was, as is clear to all people, due to the political change in the political climate in Tibet, we had to leave our country and to bring our tradition and culture to the West. And so it was important to preserve that culture and tradition, especially of the Coren lineage. There is the So it's for the preservation of the Kun lineage as well as the Sakya tradition.
Memories of just being with the lamas is so important and so significant. Whenever we had the good fortune of gathering together and listening to the teachings, and they were inconceivable. So that the teaching on the inconceivable activities and blessings of the Buddha were made manifest by the lamas, Dagchen Rinpoche, Dagchen Rinpoche, Dagmo Kusho, Jetsun Kusho, all the lamas in the neighborhood, so to speak, here in Seattle and nearby, and then also from all the wonderful lamas that were welcomed by Dagchen Rinpoche to Sakya Monastery and previously to Sakya Techen Chuling.
And I'm looking out the front window one day, and I see a small man sweeping the sidewalks. And I went down to the kitchen, and somebody else in the kitchen, I said, "Who's sweeping the sidewalks?" I don't think I met him, he doesn't live here. He says, "Well, that's our lama." And I knew what a lama was back then. And he said, "Well, would you like to meet him?" So I go outside, and I had this really short introduction, and the Rinpoche shakes my hand, I shake his, and we introduce ourselves. And then it hit me. I went back into the house, I took a look around, and there was Rinpoche just sweeping the sidewalks. So something hit me. I said, this man is a lama. He's a well-regarded, well-known lama. I even knew that back then. And I said, there he is sweeping. I said, what an earthy thing to do. He seems so rooted to the earth. I was very impressed about this. And I said to myself, I said, you know, I said, that man is doing something else besides sweeping the sidewalks. And I took it to be a metaphor for sweeping all the ills of the world away from the surface of the planet.
And Rinpoche had his helpers looking for a place to move to. And as I recall, we were not having much luck finding a place. And so he gave a protector, a Mahakala initiation. He hadn't given one up to that point. So he gave one, and like the next day, we find the place at the U District. But then it, continued at the University District with, again, having to adapt the physical structure to support a Dharma practice, a Dharma community. I think we moved in '81 over there. And then by '84 had purchased this building, the monastery, and then moved over and started practices here in '85.
So in purchasing, before they even purchased this place, when they liked this place and they felt that this was the right place, they couldn't just go and purchase it, because in Tibetan tradition, whenever we do some special activity, especially an activity, such a large activity as purchasing a building for the monastery, there were many considerations to be kept in mind, doing divinations, looking at auspicious dates, doing special pujas, and so all that had to come together before they even started on the monastery.
The monastery's building was initially erected in 1928 as the first Presbyterian church. In 1984, a Baptist group sold it to Sakya Tegchen Choling Center. When it moved to the Greenwood area, the center reorganized under His Holiness Jigdal Dagchen Sakya and adopted the name Sakya Monastery of Tibetan Buddhism. Since the purchase, many years of hard work and renovation by dedicated volunteers have brought the building to its present form and grace.
If you are willing to give to the monastery in whatever fashion, material, spiritual, emotional, he returns the blessings in so many different ways that if you experience it, you realize that he has mastered a whole level of spiritual attainments.
Dagchen Rinpoche knew what he wanted. He knew what he had to do here. And he worked really hard at it. Out of almost nothing, he brought this monastery together. It's more than a building. This is a center of energy. It's very hard to describe in any words what that energy is all about. I guess to my mind, this building is an expression of the compassion of the Buddha.
Following the first year of renovation, the downstairs cultural hall began to be used as an interim location for the monastery's religious services. For the next 12 years, the main shrine room underwent remodeling.
단단 나라를 맨데 된 맨데시 그런 대슈 대미사게를 뭐 책송이어레스 전 코로나 텐데 슈에 유지레스.
So this when Rinpoche and Dagmo Kusho, they thought about establishing this monastery, it was just a vision, it was just a plan. Without the dedication, the hard work and effort of all the people involved, it would not have been possible. Because Rinpoche and Dagmo Kusho, they could not physically do all the things that is, to make this possible. Because of the hard work and effort of all these people, and especially John Vichorek. But there were many, many wonderful volunteers, including Nishikando Adrienne, who worked effortlessly to restore, to make this the beautiful monastery that it is today. There is special, why there is always special mention of John Vichorek is because he was like Rinpoche's right-hand man. Rinpoche could just give an example of what he wanted, just give an idea of what he wanted, and John Vichorek was right there accomplishing it for him.
I started building things when I was like 14 years old. I was drilling wells and doing lots of stuff. And then I got a degree in art and a degree in math, and I never used it, just kept building stuff. And so I had the ability to figure things out. I can figure certain things out. I'm not the greatest at building stuff because there's furniture people who build furniture that can probably do it a lot better than this. But Rinpoche he wanted things done. He just couldn't wait and wait and wait and wait. He had to have things done. So I had to build things kind of in a hurry, or kind of build things with nothing. It's just the wood. When I was living in Montana, I would come to the Dharma Center on Burke Street. And the first time that I ever went to that center, Rinpoche put me to work, putting up prayer flags in the backyard. And so that's the first time I met Rinpoche, and he put me to work ever since. So the thing about me is, I guess I happened to be at the right place at the right time, and Rinpoche put me to work right away, like I said, on Burke Street. And so because I could do so many things, it kind of worked out at the monastery.
Without John, this place would hardly happen. You know. He was the moving force behind. He was Dr. Rinpoche's hands and feet to get things done here.
So we were tearing the floor out. That's my favorite vision in my head. We tore the floor out. Rinpoche was up here tearing the floor out. And he's standing right here, right about here. And he has a great big sledgehammer, huge sledgehammer. And he's standing on these big beams that go across. They're like 2 by 4 wide, 3.5 inches wide, but they're like 2 feet down. And he's knocking the ceiling down inside of the cultural hall downstairs, because we have to knock that off, get all that stuff off in order to lower this floor. So he's got this big sledgehammer, and he's knocking this stuff down. He's got his good clothes on, his pants, his little jacket, and the dust is just loaded with dust in here. And downstairs it's loaded with dust. So I'm downstairs by the doorway over there, Carolyn and I. When I was down there, I'm looking up here at Rinpoche going like this, and the light was coming through those windows. And it just must have been about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And it came down through the dust here, going down into the dust, through the dust downstairs. So here you have all these lath and plaster just hanging from the ceiling, knocked down, all the way to the floor. Plaster just all the way from the ceiling down to the floor. About 2 feet of plaster and stuff on the floor downstairs. With this light coming through, Rinpoche with his big hammer up here knocking that stuff down. Oh my God, what a great picture. I just have it in my head so clearly, him doing that. I wish I had that picture. There is no picture of that. Rinpoche wanted the Vajra Tankas, but you know, he didn't have the money or the time to have them painted. So I had to build these circles. I thought we'd put them on the ceiling, have them come down, almost like spaceships, so that the ceiling is curved and that's flat. So I had to fit those circles. Those circles are 9 feet in diameter. So I had to figure out how to make a 9-foot diameter circle to begin with. So the way I did it is I took fiberglass, laid them on the floor, did fiberglass, painted them with fiberglass, put the other layers on top so they're crisscrossed. And so if you can imagine this, how much that stunk, this fiberglass resin. And we were driving everybody out, and everybody says they're going to die from this fiberglass resin, and they're scattering, you know. But you know who's in here doing it? Rinpoche was in here doing it. Adrienne was in here doing it. Me and Carolyn were doing those 4 things. And we did those 4 things inside of this shrine room. If you see, there's Vajra Ratmya, and then there's these 8 dakinis around the outside. So I think Dhawa did some of those drawings of the dakinis to help us construct that. So from the pictures from Sakya and my son John, he did a lot of the computer work. He restructured that on computer. And then my family worked on it, doing those drawings. It took about a year to do those drawings on and off. Then it was printed on paper, and then I had to lay the paper as those were up. As those were in place, we rolled the paper out and glued it to the ceiling. So that's printed paper, photographic paper, with the computer images. Of course, I had help with all this. Carolyn Massey was right alongside of me most of the time with everything. She was helping me on everything. She would live for the monastery to work at the monastery. So I had help. It's not just me alone.
At various stages of the renovation, the highest-ranking lamas in Tibetan Buddhism, including His Holiness the Dalai Lama and His Holiness Sakya Treason, have consecrated the monastery's building and its contents, imbuing them with the enlightened spirit of the Buddha, and transforming the building into a North American home for the Buddha's teaching.
His Holiness Sakya Treason was sitting here. He was consecrating. He was going to consecrate the shrine room. He came in and he took strings from all the statues and paintings downstairs. We brought them up here, brought them to the table, strings over to his table, and then strings from all the statues, all the paintings, and from those things up there, from the tankas up there. So I had a stick, and I put tape on a stick, and then I put a string on the tape, and I stuck it to the ceiling, and then I brought that string down to the table. So they all had strings. There was a perfect circle of light on He Vajra, on that particular one. That's the one we practice. And it's glowing, perfect circle all the way around, just on the center, not just the whole thing glowing. I'm talking about a perfect circle of light. So I want to find out where that light is coming from. Either it's a miracle that this thing is glowing, because you can't see any light coming from anywhere, you just see that glowing. So I'm kind of looking around, and what happened, I go like this, and I could break the beam of light. And the sun happened to be at the right time, at the right place, without being rainy, comes down through that window. That window was cleared then, we had different windows in it. And it bounces off of that green formica, the same formicas on these tables. But it was shiny, and then it reflected up there, so it came down and reflected up there, just at the right time. And it lasted for 15 minutes or whatever time it took for the sun to move away. So that is it's kind of like a miracle, but it's a coincidence. And there are special coincidences that happen that are like miracles. I mean, never going to happen again, especially in Seattle. So everybody saw it. Everybody's just staring at that. So anyway, I'm at Trinity Rinpoche's house. You know, Rinpoche's talking, and Rinpoche says, sit down, sit down, sit down. And so I want to sit on the floor because I don't want to sit as high as he is. And I said, no, Rinpoche, I don't want to sit down. I want to sit down here. No, you sit up here. He says, okay. So he sits on the floor. And that made me feel bad, so I sat up here because I didn't want him to sit on the floor. And so he says, he is telling me stories, and he's talking about his brother, Dagchen Rinpoche. And he says, you know, Dagchen Rinpoche is really the one to follow. He says, the way he talked about him was he really, really spectacular High Lama. And then he talked about me, and he says, you know, he says, you have better karma than Bill Gates. And I started laughing, and I'm thinking, Bill Gates? He's got this incredible house, all this money, billions of dollars, and here I am poor, you know. He says, because you're with Dagchen Rinpoche, and you stick with Dagchen Rinpoche. He says, yeah, your karma is a lot better than Bill Gates.
Numerous Buddhist artworks were donated by the monastery's members, friends, as well as by professional artists and Rinpoche's family. Extensive murals were painted on site. Many of these murals were painted by Tibetan artist Dhawa Dhundup Ngoche.
I knew I would be painting murals, but I did not know the amount of work that would be, required. But I was really, mostly really excited and very focused. From the moment I got the invitation, I just stayed focused, and I'm very, very excited. And I brought my own brushes and things, sort of anything that I possessed at the time, and some extra, supplies that I bought, and then I thought I was going to use those materials here. So that was a really interesting, eye-opening thing when John Vichorek, is a really old member of this monastery, who's done just amazing, just phenomenal work here. Without him, we wouldn't be really looking at all these things. So he took me in his Toyota truck, down to Daniel Smith, which was down, I think it's still down there, South Seattle, on First Avenue. It was just amazing. I saw all these pigments, pigments. There's so many color choices, like oil, acrylic, water, whatever form, of medium I wanted to use. It was all there. In India, when we paint murals, again, it comes down to either enamel, which is not durable at all, and is not a high quality pigment, or water-based paint, and that they use some sort of coating to protect it, and that again would not last very long. And the surface usually is cement. So here the foundation is all canvas, actual canvas, and then we use these high quality pigments. Before I came here, I had only seen the outside of the monastery, so I had that idea of from the outside what it looked like, but from the inside I had no idea. The walls were all white. There was nothing that was painted. Everything was white, but everything was prepared very nicely. The canvas that they had used was perfect for the painting. So it was all really, really a blank canvas. But when it's all white, a bit overwhelming. So I remember, when I started drawing, they did sketches of actually the banner and the lamdri. A lot of white space to stare, and then kind of to kind of visualize how everything should fit in. So I started with the banner at the very top, and then again we kind of mapped out the surface area where the lamdri lineage would go, and I think I had a really big piece of paper that kind of took the shape of the area, and then I had to really play out the placement on the floor to make sure, I get all the when I drew out the images, I had to place them, all of these, to make sure that they would fit nicely before I transfer them up there. So before I actually painted the deities, I had finished the lamdri masters. Rinpoche would be here every day. If it's not in the office downstairs, he's up here working with someone or looking at my paintings. And so I, between Jeff Schoening, John Vichorek, and Rinpoche. Jeff Schoening kind of he finds the resources, like things like pictures of Lamde lamas, from any resources, because I had never painted Lamde lineage before. So he had to work with Rinpoche and to find maybe copies and drawings of, or any kind of painting, anything that we could find. And then once I had these examples, then I drew them out on pieces of paper and then showed them to Rinpoche to see what he thought, And so before I actually transferred anything up there on the wall, it would be approved by Rinpoche. So then I had all 4 of them done at this, one after another. I did not transfer one and start painting. I made sure that I had all 4 of them drawn. The outlining, this is you see the outlines here on everywhere. Basically, you see outlines. Those are done as a third step. The flat color first, shading, and then outlines. And most of it basically are done at this point, except for certain areas like this. The design here, you see very elaborate design here. That I had to really take extra step afterwards.
Yeah, well, you can see all this. It's cross-hatched, a lot of things are 3-dimensional. So he did that with a bicycle inner tube. So he put an end on a bicycle inner tube, and then he was squeezing his bicycle inner tube, and he did that. Incredible work.
Around that time, we also had another artist who who painted that other painting over the 16 arhats. So he and I would be kind of chatting, and he was over there painting, and he actually wrote the names of the lamas here. He had a good handwriting, Tibetan handwriting. So yeah, I remember Rinpoche's late brother, Tulen Rinpoche. He exactly sensed what I always kind of took pride in. He said, "Your paintings look like the old, sort of like classical Tibetan paintings that he's seen in Tibet." He was very happy with the kind of work I was doing, how the paintings these were shaping up. So that was the biggest compliment that I got. He always said that, yeah. I would be doing drawings down here, and Rinpoche would look at things, and he would sometimes say, "Hey, look at this," and I would have to, because even though I was trained, I'm not perfect, and he saw things that needed to be, done in a certain way, and he's very forthcoming, yeah, so it was really good, very casual. So that was a rare experience. Usually in India, the lamas are way up there, artists, you don't get that level of interaction. Here, Rinpoche would come and just look at my drawings and just express his thoughts. So I had the chance to make corrections and things. This is actually my first Wheel of Life. So, and there are examples that has similar, layouts and similar, but everything you see here is basically something that I've drawn from grounds up. But the amount of the detail and the material and quality that this monastery has, that's something I think I would consider, rare to find anywhere. Most monasteries would have a lot of murals, but when you look up close, you'll see the details are not there and the quality is not there.
I saw Dhawa make brushes. They were like single hair brushes. I mean, if you look up there, you can't see it from here, but if you go up there, there's hair and there's incredible detail on those things up there. No, but you have to get up really close to see the detail.
By this time, I was very comfortable with doing traditional work that looks a little more realistic, even though it's all done in traditional method and style. but maybe it's a measurement or maybe it's very slight nuances. I was very comfortable with that. 3 paintings, it probably took three years. And this is like the opportunity of a lifetime. I mean, you know, not many artists really get this kind of opportunity to have gone through the kind of training that I went through, and then be able to do something that you could, you know, that leaves a, you know, huge impact. I'm just so thankful for Rinpoche for having done such a great work. Most people did not know the importance of, at the time, you know, people were busy in their own lives, and now this is like the heart of, you know, Tibetan community and Dharma practitioners, and it benefits so many people. So that's just amazing, the vision and the effort and the result.
Many other artists contributed their time and skill to the monastery over the years, including Khalsang Lodo and Sonam Wangchuk, who sculpted the Buddha, and Lopan Tumpo and Jigme Tenzin, who worked on the Mahakala sculptures. Lama Migmar, a skilled artist and resident of Sakya Monastery, painted a large Lamdre lineage tree tanka and helped with final painting work on the Buddha and other sculptures. In 1992, Bernardo Bertolucci shot scenes for the film Little Buddha at the monastery. This venture helped pay for the new wood parquet floor in the shrine room. Outside the building, in keeping with the style of traditional Tibetan monasteries, a portico was added over the front entrance.
It was built in sections. So I made a corner section that went maybe out to here, another piece, another piece, another piece. My son had a big truck. So we had a cable, we had a bunch of water up on our ceiling with a beam sticking out, and then 55-gallon drum of water holding the beam down. And so he'd pull them up into place, and I'd set them in place, each section. I built the sections inside the shrine room, and then we'd put them all in place and screw them together. So the inspector comes, he's supposed to inspect this work. So he looks at that, and he has no idea. He has no idea about what that is, how it's put together, or anything. It's all alien to him because it's not Western. You know, he doesn't see stuff like that. So he says, okay. He signed off on it without saying a word.
By 1997, the remodeling was sufficiently finished so that the main shrine room could be used for meditations. In 1998, the outside of the monastery's building was painted in traditional Tibetan colors, and a memorial stupa was erected to Daesung Rinpoche III. The bell-shaped stupa symbolizes the Buddha's enlightened mind. In 2001, a library edition capable of holding at least 5,000 volumes was finished and opened. In the summer of 2010, Dagchen Rinpoche consecrated 32 new Padmasambhava prayer wheels along the east side of Sakya Monastery.
And so with establishing this monastery, Rinpoche is able to preserve a lot of the traditions and customs and rituals of the old Sakya. And as the mandalas on the ceiling will reflect, these are the mandalas of the Hevajra, one of the most important deities in the Sakya tradition. And so in the monastery around all these scrolls and murals, these all tell a story about Sakya.
The Sakya family was the first Tibetan family to come to the United States, and he has, with the help of the Sangha and many teachers, built an incredible monastery of Tibetan Buddhism. I travel back and forth to New York City on a regular basis. There is nothing like Sakya Monastery of Tibetan Buddhism in the greater New York City area. There are very few monasteries in the United States, period, of Tibetan Buddhism, so this is really an exemplary, very, very special place, led and created by a very special spiritual leader.
For the purpose of the preservation of Tibetan culture and religion, Rinpoche has overseen the religious activities and administration of the monastery since its inception.
From many years, from his house to here, he comes like in the morning early, late evenings. He built this temple really hard. And if he finds one nail, he brings down here trying to use somewhere.
His work has also included the founding of Tibetan Buddhist communities overseas in India, Hong Kong, Taiwan, Nepal, Bhutan, and Southeast Asia, and teaching at Buddhist centers around the world.
The teachings of His Holiness Jigdal Dagchen Sakya extend far beyond just Seattle, and actually he's revered as a spiritual leader by thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people in Tibet, Nepal, India. And it's when you visit, say, Darjeeling, and you see thousands of people lined up to get a blessing by him, you really understand who His Holiness Jigdal Dagchen Sakya really is.
I mean, I came from this, these big monasteries, and I come here to this beautiful monastery, and you see these, beautiful statues and tangas, and what's the reason for that? What's it all about? I mean, this building is not built of bricks. It's built from bodhicitta, I can say. It is. I mean, my grandparents. This is what my grandparents, built it for. This is what it's all about.
I hope this monastery will be here for a very, very long time, so people can come and learn the Dharma. Because most of the people that come here is because they have problems and trouble in their life, so they come here to seek an answer to all these, and I hope they find an answer, and I think the Dharma can benefit them.
Well, right now I've only just begun my journey to be a lineage holder, so although it seems far ahead in the future, I can picture myself coming back here and sharing the things I've learned with everyone here. But since one of my ancestors was in the first ever group of monks to be ordained in Tibet, and also there have been many other great lamas like the Sakya Benita, the Chojapapa, and Lama Tamba, I chose to follow in their footsteps and to be a monk of the Coren lineage.
It's many Tibetan Buddhist community, Buddhist Lama, Buddhist teacher is coming to here. That's why we together, West people, we share. There's a benefit only no monastery, all of we are, because we are really changed to your suffering, your problem, what do you have? I wish His Holiness Dagchen Rinpoche, long life. Also, we have this Sakya Monastery, Dharma practitioner. We have between relationship, more practice, more learning, more this monastery we have 100% grow up to. Also, we have wish finally is enlightenment. Also, just we everybody wish everybody this dream.
Past 30 years, Dagchen Rinpoche, Dagmo Kusho, and the other members. Of course, our staffs like secretaries, and of course the lamas, the teachers, work so hard, unbelievable, So now we have beautiful temple, and the lovely society, and those precious books look behind me. So we have everything now. So now the time to practice. And the death is always around us. Time to open the Dharma books. Really, time to sit down and generate love, compassion for all sentient beings. So now we are in the golden time.
Ju